This morning, we just got a new report from a key producer on Donald Trump's old show, The Apprentice. This producer claims he signed an NDA back in 2004 and it expired this year, 20 years later, and he can now talk about a tape that exists where Donald Trump calls a black contestant the N-word. He also describes how The Apprentice helped to revitalize Donald Trump's image from a failed businessman, a con man, to someone who is a savvy and decisive businessman, which is just not true whatsoever. But he describes how Donald Trump was still a nightmare behind the scenes of the show. I want to go through this new article and highlight some of the key moments, but first, this Deadline article reads, producer on The Apprentice claims Donald Trump used N-word when faced with prospect of a black winner in show's first season. Bill Pruitt, who worked on the first seasons of the NBC reality show, writes in a story on Slate that Trump used the word while dismissing the idea that a black contestant, Kwame Jackson, could be an early winner on the series. There has long been intrigue over the outtakes from the show and the possibility that they contain Trump using the racist phrase. Tom Arnold claimed to have seen a tape and even hosted a reality series of his own, positing a hunt for the footage. And I want to read to you some of the highlights of this article by ex-producer Bill Pruitt. And I just want to say, if this tape actually exists, I don't doubt that Donald Trump said the word, but if the tape he's talking about actually exists, and it came out before the 2024 election, I genuinely think this would dissuade a lot of voters from voting for Donald Trump. I think this would put a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. Obviously, his cult, his core fan base will vote for him no matter what, but there are a lot of voters on the fence, and I think this tape would truly send a chill down their spine. They would not want to vote for Donald Trump after hearing it. And thank God it's just the N-word tape we might have to watch and not the P tapes from Donald Trump. So the article is titled, The Donald Trump I Saw on The Apprentice. For 20 years, I couldn't say what I watched the former president do on the set of the show that changed everything. Now I can. I'm going to skip to some of the more interesting parts. So he writes, The Apprentice was an instant success in another way, too. It elevated Donald Trump from sleazy New York tabloid hustler to respectable household name. In the show, he appeared to demonstrate impeccable business instincts and unparalleled wealth, even though his businesses had barely survived multiple bankruptcies and faced yet another when he was cast. By carefully misleading viewers about Trump, his wealth, his stature, his character, and his intent, the competition reality show set about an American fraud that would balloon beyond its creator's wildest imaginations. Bill Pruitt writes, I should know. I was one of the 4 producers involved in the first 2 seasons. During that time, I signed an expansive non-disclosure agreement that promised a fine of $5 million and even jail time if I were ever to divulge what actually happened. It expired this year. As Trump answers for another of his alleged deception schemes in New York and gears up to try to persuade Americans to elect him again, in part thanks to the myth we created, I can finally tell you what making Trump into what he is today looked like from my side. Most days were revealing, some still haunt me 2 decades later. Pruitt explains how they hired a professional psychologist as a perceptions expert on the show to make sure people have the perception that Donald Trump is a successful, savvy businessman, even if that didn't quite map onto reality. Pruitt explains how the show was basically a long con of deceiving people about Donald Trump's image, and of course, as he said, it ballooned beyond their wildest imaginations. He says, the real con that drove The Apprentice is far older than television. The, quote, pig in the poke comes from an idiom dating to 1555. I'll never buy a pig in a poke. There's many a foul pig in a fair cloak. It refers to the time-honored scam of selling a suckling pig at a market but handing over a bag to the purchaser who never looked inside of it. Eventually, he discovers he purchased something quite different. Our show became a 21st century version. It's a long con played out over a decade of watching Trump dominate primetime by shouting orders, appearing to lead, and confidently firing some of the most capable people on television, all before awarding one eligible person a job. Audiences responded to Trump's arrogance, his perceived abilities and prescience, but mostly his confidence. The centerpiece to any confidence game is precisely that, confidence. Pruitt describes how Trump was rather incoherent on set, but through clever editing techniques, they were able to make him seem confident and concise when he was speaking. Nothing is scripted, except for what Trump needs to say. Cue cards are present, but mostly it is Bienstock running up, coaching Trump, tossing out suggestions from the script he has written for the man. The feeling is that while doing a fair job of repeating the necessary words verbatim, Trump also appears to be inadvertently shouting at the contestants. His hands shuttle back and forth as if holding an invisible accordion, a gesture now famous in memes. Now, this is important, he writes. The Apprentice is a game show regulated by the Federal Communications Commission. In the 1950s, scandals arose when producers of quiz shows fed answers to likable, ratings-generating contestants while withholding those answers from unlikable but truly knowledgeable players. Any of us involved in The Apprentice swinging the outcome of prize money by telling Trump whom to fire is forbidden. Considering this, Bienstock, one of the other producers, wisely chooses to record these off-camera briefings in case the FCC ever rolls up on us. Rather than blurt out who they think should get canned, the two producers of that week's episode, each following one team, are coached to equitably share with Trump the virtues and deficiencies of each member of the losing team. This renders a balanced depiction of how and why they lost. These are obvious choices of whom to fire, but we want it to be something of a horse race to sustain the drama and keep people watching. Now, when Trump said the N-word, it was allegedly during one of these recorded meetings meant for the FCC. Pruitt then goes on to describe how they coined Donald Trump's catchphrase, "You're fired," when they needed something catchy to end the first episode. He describes the shooting process, but let's get to the meat and bones. While leering at a female camera assistant or assessing the physical attributes of a female contestant for whoever is listening, Trump orders a female camera operator off an elevator on which she is about to film him. Quote, "She's too heavy," end quote, I hear him say. Another female camera operator, who happens to have blonde hair and blue eyes, draws from Trump comparisons to his own Ivanka Trump. Trump always does this. It's so weird. "There's a beautiful woman behind that camera," he says towards a line of 10 different operators set up in the foyer of Trump Tower one day. "That's all I want to look at," Trump says. Trump corners a female producer and asks her whom he should fire. She demurs, saying something about how one of the contestants blamed another for their team losing. Trump then raises his hands, cupping them to his chest. Quote, "You mean the one with the ... He doesn't know the contestant's name, but Trump eventually fires her. And in response to detailed questions about this and other incidents reported in this article, Stephen Chung, a spokesperson for the Trump 2024 campaign, wrote, quote, "This is a completely fabricated and bullshit story that was already peddled in 2016. He said that is now surfacing because Democrats are desperate. But multiple people that worked on the show have corroborated that these stories are true, both the ones about his disrespect towards females on set and him saying the N-word. We have heard this from multiple people. Viewers need to believe that whatever Trump touches turns to gold. These properties that bear his name are supposed to glitter and gleam, all thanks to him. But reality is another matter altogether. The lights in the casino sign are out. Hong Kong investors actually own the place. Trump merely lends his name. The carpet stinks and the surroundings for Simpsons concert are ramshackle at best. We shoot around all that." Pruitt says, "We are taken around the rest of the club's property and told what to feature on camera and what to stay away from. The clubhouse is a particularly necessary inclusion, and it is inside these luxurious confines where I have the privilege of meeting the architect. Finding myself alone with him, I make a point of commending him for what I feel is a remarkable building. This place is genuinely spectacular. He thanks me. Quote, "It's bittersweet," he tells me. "I'm very proud of this place, but..." He hesitates. "I wasn't paid what was promised," he says. "I just listen." Trump pays half up front, he says, but he'll stiff you for the rest once the project is completed. This is classic Donald Trump. "He stiffed you," Pruitt asks. "If I tried to sue, the legal bills would be more than what I was owed. He knew that. He basically said, take what I'm offering, and I see how heavy this is for the man, all these years later. So we sent the invoice. He didn't even pay that," he says. "None of this will be in the show. Not Trump's suggested infidelities, nor his aversion toward paying those who work for him. Only this grandiose image of Donald Trump created through clever editing." So this is where it happens. There were a few contestants left by the end of the season, and they needed to choose who actually wins, who gets hired by the organization. One of these contestants was Kwame Jackson, the only black person on the show. "I think Kwame would be a great addition to the organization," Kepcher says to Trump, who winces while his head bobs around in reaction to what he is hearing and clearly resisting. "Why didn't he just fire her?" Trump asks, referring to Omarosa. It's a reasonable question. Given that this is the first time we've ever been in this situation, none of this is something we expected. That's not his job, Bienstock says to Trump. That's yours. Trump's head continues to bob. I don't think he knew he had the ability to do that, Kepcher says. Trump winces again. Yeah, he says to no one in particular, but I mean, would America buy a N-word winning? Kepcher's pale skin goes bright red. I turn my gaze towards Trump. He continues to wince. He is serious, and he is adamant about not hiring Jackson. Bienstock does a half cough, half laugh, and swiftly changes the topic or throws to Ross for his assessment. What happens next, I don't entirely recall. I am still processing what I have just heard. We all are. Only Bienstock knows well enough to keep the train moving. None of us thinks to walk out the door and never return. I still wish I had. So I want to know what you guys think. If this tape came out, would it alienate any voters? Because I truly think it would. I don't know if it would change the outcome of the 2024 election. I don't know if it's that big, but if there was an October surprise and it was this tape coming out, if the tape exists, I do think a lot of voters would be very hesitant to vote for Donald Trump. But I always like to hear what you guys think about this stuff. My name is Adam Mockler. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, share this video around, comment a blue heart if you made it this far, subscribe, but have a great day yourself.